Former investigator recalls obsessive search for the Golden State Killer. Salem, or. The ski-masked face tormented Larry Crompton for decades. It started with a string of sexual assaults that plagued Contra Costa County, California, where Crompton worked as a sheriff's deputy and sergeant. First labeled the East Area Rapist, the attacker became known as the Golden State Killer and the original Night Stalker as rapes escalated to murder. The case eventually became linked to 12 murders, 51 rapes and hundreds of burglaries throughout California from 1974 to 1986. But it was that unrecognizable, sketched face that kept Crompton hunting for answers, even after he retired from law enforcement and settled down in Salem. Then on Tuesday, more than 40 years after the reign of terror began, the suspected serial killer was unmasked. More, Golden State Killer suspect placed on suicide watch, appears in court. More, break-in Golden State Killer case came from DNA on genealogy website. Joseph James D'Angelo, a 72-year-old ex-cop and Navy veteran, was arrested outside his Citrus Heights home 20 miles northwest of Sacramento and charged with 8 murders. Suddenly his mugshot was everywhere. Crompton almost couldn't believe it. After years of poring over police reports, tracking down leads and even authoring a 479-page book on the crime spree, the suspected serial killer was now behind bars. Crompton called a retired detective he worked with on the East Area Rapist task force to see what he knew. It was true, he said. They had the DNA evidence to prove it. It took 42 years, and he finally got caught, Crompton said. 4 decades ago, Crompton was working in the crime lab of the Contra Costa Sheriff's Office when he was asked to meet with investigators from neighboring Sacramento County. News didn't travel as fast back in those days, and law enforcement agencies were terrible about sharing information, Crompton said. By the time he learned of the attacks, there already had been 37 rapes. Sacramento investigators outlined what they knew. The attacker always wore a mask, gloves and threatened to kill his victims. They dubbed the man the East Area Rapist. "We think he's coming to your area," the investigators warned them. "You had better be ready for him." By 1978, the serial rapist had arrived in Contra Costa County. They weren't ready, Crompton said. The attacks occurred a few times a month, sometimes even weekly. Crompton, now promoted to sergeant and placed on a task force to hunt the serial rapist, watched as the brutal details piled up. Husbands would be tied up and forced to listen to their wives being attacked. The rapist stacked dishes on their backs, telling the husband if he heard the dishes rattle, he would kill his wife. A 13-year-old girl was sexually assaulted in her home. Women woke up to a flashlight shining in their faces, a stranger in their bedrooms. The attacker always promised to kill his victims. Sometimes he would call his victims years later and remind them of that promise. Crompton said the attacker wanted to instill terror in his victims. He succeeded. The community grew fearful. Families planned escape routes. Gun sales skyrocketed, especially among women. Some victims divorced. Others began drinking. One woman was so traumatized she couldn't return home, not even to collect her belongings. He was the most terrorizing rapist in California history, Crompton said. He took police reports to a psychiatrist, who reviewed the information with convicted rapists at a nearby prison. A week later, she told him, "You had better catch him. He is going to kill, and he wants to kill." The attacker wanted justification for killing, the psychiatrist said, and it was only a matter of time before he found it. Crompton chased potential suspects doggedly, even having one threaten to file a restraining order against him. He and his partner, thinking the attacker might have a criminal history, eliminated all but 34 people on a list of more than 9,000 parolees. During the last Contra Costa incident, the couple involved had planned an escape route. When the husband awoke to find a man in his bedroom pulling on a mask, he shouted and yelled, giving his wife time to escape. In the commotion, the husband was also able to flee the home. Crompton said he believes this foiled attack provided D'Angelo with justification. After that, He wasn't going to let anyone escape. By 1979, the rapes ended in Contra Costa County. The task force disbanded, but Crompton couldn't let go of the case. He stayed in contact with victims and kept tabs on similar attacks. When he heard rumors of a serial killer in Southern California with similar crime scenes, he and another investigator tried to warn authorities. The killer would tie up couples, sexually assault the woman and either shoot or beat his victims to death. "It is our man," Crompton remembered saying. "No doubt about it. But nobody would believe us." He was told to forget it. Crompton didn't forget it. The attacks mysteriously stopped in 1986 after the rape and murder of 18-year-old Janelle Cruz.